So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, hey everybody, we are back for Kent with Bent number 70, American Hovind story. Now, I know I did use that originally as the title for like 67 or something, but here's the thing, after Kent said that he didn't believe in rain, I changed the title to reflect that. So, yeah. Which means I basically just am going to reuse this one. So, there you go. I know it's kind of cheating, but hey, this is going to be a busy month. So, it already has been a busy month. And hey, we have a new outro for today, for October. So I want to say thank you for everyone who is a patron or who is a channel member for October. That is greatly appreciated. It is a big part of helping this channel stay with its rather high upload rate and stream rate and just putting out content every week, multiple videos. So it wouldn't be happening if it weren't for that, because I just couldn't put as much time in it as I do, which is, yeah, it would be a big deal. But anyway, Bent, how are you?
I can't hear you in Discord.
You can't hear me in Discord?
But I can hear you.
How are you now?
The house. Oh, I'm doing okay. I'm looking forward to not looking forward to hearing Kent make me mad.
Okay.
But you know how it goes, right? It's the same thing every time. That's what we got the stress ball for. So, yeah.
Yeah. Stress balls are nice. It's an accoutrement for Kent with Bent that I do heartily endorse. Thank you. All right. So let's go over the drinking rules for Kent with Bent, because we got rules. This is not like the street where they ain't got no rules. Here we have rules. So, first, we drink whenever Kent Hovind says something that's just so stupid we kind of have to. Next, we drink whenever Kent Hovind says something that he actually gets right, without it just being a quotation, right? So if he just quotes someone who's right, that doesn't count. But if he himself gets something scientific or historical right, we take a drink. It's our least frequent drink, but so far, I don't think we've ever had one where we didn't take a drink for that at least once. We came close last week, where I think we only did it once at the towards the very end.
I feel like there's maybe only been like one each in the last couple episodes, last few maybe.
Yeah. So let's see. We also take a drink whenever Kent Hovind. Oh. We take a drink whenever Godzilla or Mothra stop by, or technically King Ghidorah. Now I'm going to tell you how it is that you can make them come by on your own if you want to. So my channel members can have access to my stickers, or not stickers, but emojis, right? So we have special channel emojis. 3 of them are various kaiju. If we get a super chat with that kaiju in there, we do take a drink. So I do encourage you, if you're going to super chat and you're a channel member, throw one in there. Make us drink, man. Okay. So we also take a drink whenever Kent Hovind tells a story that we're pretty sure didn't happen. So basically, we usually consider that like Kent Hovind thinking of his shower thoughts conversations as real memories, because we're pretty sure that's how that happens. So yeah, we take a drink for that. What am I missing? Oh, right, predictions. Yeah, sometimes one of us will make a prediction about what Kent is going to say or do next, and if we want to, we'll declare that if he does, we'll take a drink. So sometimes we take a drink for that. Please do drink responsibly. If you don't want to drink alcohol, please don't. If you do, be careful. We recommend that, you don't use any heavy machinery or anything after this, and we also do not accept any responsibility or liability for any injuries to oneself or others or destruction of property that may result from following the drinking rules on Kent with Bent. This is a play at your own risk drinking game. Like pretty much all of them, I guess.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, if you know what you're getting into, if you've been here more than once, and if it's your first time, maybe just stick with water until you figure out how this is going to go. But anyway, we are near the end of Creation Science Evangelism 201 Class 3. I have Class 4 ready to go if we need it, because we've only got like 10 minutes left of this, and I suspect a lot of it's going to be preaching. So let's see what we got. We'll finish up, hopefully, class 3, and then we'll just jump right into class 4.
The evolutionists will assume that if you add energy, you can overcome the second law. And I get this all the time.
It's okay, so it's not so much an assumption as an observable fact that if you add energy to a system, you can decrease the total entropy in the system, or at least you can decrease the proportion of the energy in the system that has been lost to entropy, right? So for instance, if you have a heat engine, heat engines generally burn fuel to make heat, to then usually boil water, the steam turns something. As it turns whatever turbine, it cools, condenses back down, and then you pump that water back into the boiler. So what is your source of energy that this system has? Well, it's the fuel for whatever it is that's heating your boiler. It traditionally, coal or wood, but nowadays we also have things like, nuclear reactors and things like that, right? You can get solar-powered heating thing, whatever. Well, what happens as you run out of fuel? Let's say you're burning coal, right? Because this is a pretty basic example. So coal stores all this energy as chemical energy, and then as you burn it, you release the chemical energy into thermal energy. But throughout the whole system, you're having energy losses where some of the heat is just going to reduce the gradient between the heat sink, which is your condenser, and the heat source, which is your boiler, which is, has a coal fire in there. Well, how do you fix this? Well, eventually you're going to run out of coal, and then that heat gradient is going to disappear completely. Well, if you add more coal, guess what? You can bring the heat gradient back, or you can keep it persistent, which means that more and more of the a higher proportion of the energy in the total system is still available for work, even if the actual amount of entropy, in the sense of the amount of energy that is no longer available to work, is going to stay basically the same before and after you add more coal. That's okay. You're still adding more energy, so you can still perform more work than the system could originally. So, yeah. And yes, David DB Numbers says, I'm no scientist, but doesn't the second law of thermodynamics specifically exempt non-isolated systems within the law itself? Yes. And Earth is a closed but not isolated system. It's not technically closed, but it's so close to being closed that it might as well just be closed. As a quick overview of the three main kinds of thermodynamic systems, you have open, where both matter and energy can enter and leave the system. You have closed, where matter may not enter or leave the system, but energy may. So you could actually think of this as just the water cycle of a heat engine, right? So if you don't include the fire, so you just have the inside of the boiler, and I am probably buffering because my connection is really, really bad. All right. Let's see if we can't fix this. Oh, and now it's just back. All right. So, sorry guys, my connection just basically dropped. So what I was saying is, a closed system, energy can enter and leave the system, but matter can't. So if you just take the boiler part of a heat engine and the turbine and the condenser, but you don't include, say, the fire that you're using to boil, then there you go. That's a closed system. An isolated system, neither energy nor matter can enter or leave the system. Earth is closed because it routinely receives and it radiates energy from the surrounding environment, which is the galaxy, I guess. So it receives energy primarily from the sun, then it radiates energy away. And in fact, the thing about global warming is that it is radiating less energy than it receives, which means that overall, you're going to have to heat up. There's literally physically no other option for the globe if it radiates less than it receives from the sun, other than to increase in temperature. Glad that you're all hearing me. Sorry if there was any buffering or anything. My connection to the YouTube server went down to 0 for a second, so. And here are the dogs. But let's hear some more, Ken.
They'll say, Hovind, the second law only applies in a closed system. They'll say, can't you come in and straighten out a room? You can add energy and increase the order. Yes.
Well, Kent is already wrong because it's an isolated system that is really needed. You can, in fact, overcome entropy in a closed system as long as you receive enough energy. But let's hear granting that he doesn't know the difference between closed and isolated, which of course he doesn't. Let's continue and we'll keep hearing what he has to say.
Yes, I can. You can walk in and straighten up the library. Yep. I can add energy and overcome the second law. But the universe is a closed system. Here's the argument they're going to give you. They're going to say,
So that was true. The universe it's isolated, but like I said, we're forgiving the difference between closed and isolated for Kent. So we're going to take a drink for Kent being right. The universe is probably an isolated system. And even if it's not, it seems like it's close enough to being an isolated system that it doesn't really matter. And yeah, sorry, sometimes dogs just decide to bark. I don't know. They found a murderer and they're gonna go scare him off.
I heard one that no one else can hear.
Right. It's a murderer who makes very high-pitched noises, apparently. So, here we go.
the Earth receives energy from the sun. I understand. I've seen it many times. They'll say, well, see, that's how we overcome the second law. The sun is losing energy, that's true, but we are gaining some of it, so that's how we're able to work this. That's why evolution works. That is a cop-out for an answer.
Okay, why?
Okay? And it's not true either.
Hold on, it's not true that we receive energy from the sun? Because
Does Kent know about...
he just said it was true.
Photosynthesis, Kent. I'm not going to pretend I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't have the time and patience for that today. Not with a word with that many syllables, Kent.
Ooh.
It's photosynthesis. Come on, man.
I mean, it is true the Earth receives energy from the sun, but it's not true that that's going to overcome the second law.
Why not?
Adding energy is destructive unless there's a very complicated mechanism to harness the energy.
Why does it have to be complicated? Okay, so at its basic thermodynamic level, life is a force that increases entropy more than it would increase otherwise, right? So life finds energy gradients, whether it be chemical, from the sun, or, I mean, yeah, basically those two. I don't know of any life forms that gain their energy directly from thermal gradients, but I guess I can't say it's impossible. I'm not aware of any. Anyway, so they take that energy gradient and they reduce it faster than would happen without that organism there. So when, say, plants receive sunlight, they dissipate that into thermal energy faster than a rock would. Because rocks would be, scattering all of that as photons, and very little of it would be going into, like, actual complex chemical bonds or anything. Okay. Same thing with chemical energy, right? The chemical energy that you get from, say, eating a bunch of sugar is going to be released much more quickly than if you just let the sugar try to decay naturally, which eventually it probably would. But, like, it would take a long time. Whereas your body turns it into thermal energy and powers your, cells pretty quickly. So, but the thing is, you don't actually need a terribly complex mechanism to make this work. So, scientists have made something called hypercycles, right? These are sort of cell-like, and they do in fact have a rudimentary metabolism, but basically they're just a bunch of, like, lipids in a bilayer that forms pretty much automatically because of the fact that lipids tend to have these particular lipids tend to have a hydrophobic and a hydrophilic side, so they just tend to form bilayer bubbles, and they can go around and they can metabolize things, and they can split apart when they get too big. So the basics of metabolism are something you don't even need life for. Just basic chemistry will get you metabolism. Now, granted, it's organic chemistry, but fortunately, Earth is something that has a whole lot of that element. What is it? Carbon.
Carbon.
Yeah, it has a lot of carbon. So carbon, okay. So lots of complicated organic chemistry can happen on Earth before you even need organisms. But here's Kent with more nonsense.
Question. Does gasoline have energy? Can you light it and get some power out of it? Sure. Why don't you pour the front seat of your car full of gasoline and drop in a match? You got all that energy. Is your car going to run? No.
Yes, Ken. First, I'm going to take a drink. This is stupid.
That's pretty incredibly stupid.
Yes, Ken. We could sit here all day and list off ways in which you can add energy to a system that doesn't get you any significant amount of work out of it. But we could also point out ways to add energy to a system where you do get more work out of it, right? So, for instance, if you add, say, more energy to, I don't know, the ocean, you may get stronger convection currents, which do work. There you go. I mean, it's that easy. Shining light on water makes work happen. That's how simple this can be. So I'm glad that Kent can find any number of examples where adding energy doesn't result in significant work occurring. But it doesn't matter because there are other options where it does.
Right. Kent's method would involve a lot of thermal energy instead of work.
Yeah.
Like from the explosion. Don't do Kent's way.
Yeah, don't pour
Probably in
gasoline
just about
on it.
anything, like, don't do it Kent's
As
way.
a general rule, you shouldn't pour gasoline on things and then set them on fire. Just saying. It's a bad idea most of the time.
True, gasoline contains energy that can be, but it has to have a way to harness it. A very complicated way to harness it.
Actually, it doesn't have to be all that complicated. Like, okay, the minimum that you would really need to use gasoline to harvest something, right? So first, gasoline doesn't really, there's really not like well, there's never really a detonation with gasoline, but like, there isn't that big explosion that you think of with gasoline, unless it's atomized. So if it's just in like a bucket, it's actually not that flammable that it's just going to all explode. So the minimum that you would really need is a container with an open top of gasoline, another container over it full of water, and then just part of a little like a flywheel or a turbine. And yeah, you'll manage to slowly turn that turbine by setting the gasoline on fire, having it boil the water, and there you go. That's it. It's actually not that complicated. Now, is this going to be very efficient? Well, no, because there's a reason we use internal combustion and not external combustion when we, drive cars. However, that is not to say that you did not just create an engine. You did. It's extremely simple. The reason we have these really complicated advanced engines isn't because we can't make simple engines. It's because, well, all this complexity is adding to the efficiency, which is actually already not very high. Cars are like, they're really low in efficiency. I think they're like somewhere around the teens in terms of percent of chemical energy actually turned into propulsion. I'm sure someone in the chat or in the comments will look it up and then tell me how wrong I am, which please do.
It takes a really complicated set of machineries to harness the energy from gasoline. You have to have a carburetor or a fuel injection system or something, a means of breaking the gas up into molecules or smaller and mixing it with air.
Molecules or smaller?
Or smaller.
I'm going to take a drink.
Oh.
First, the atomizers don't actually...
I'm gonna add that one.
Don't really turn the gas into just individual molecules of gasoline.
Or smaller.
You're getting a fine mist of liquid droplets, which is enough surface area that you can get the really strong combustion that you want. But if you break it, the fire is what breaks it into things that are smaller than the original molecule. But if your fuel injection system directly broke apart the the molecules in the gasoline, you wouldn't need things like a spark plug or anything else to cause the ignition, because the injector would be doing the ignition for you, because it is literally the breaking apart of the molecules in the gasoline that gets you the energy. It's like, this is just high school, right? Like, high school chemistry tells you why it is that no one is breaking gasoline into molecules or smaller with a fuel injection system.
You have to have a way of sucking it in. You have to have an intake stroke. You have to have...
Yeah, but Kent, that's a result of the fact that these pistons are connected to radially spinning armatures. So when they go out, right, that's already creating the lower pressure, which is sucking gas in. And then back up on the upstroke, they start to compress the gas. And then you have a well-timed spark, which explodes it again. And again, the downstroke is what's sucking in new fuel. You're getting that for free. It's not an extra part that you need. And this is also the episode where I try to pull out every last little bit of automotive knowledge I have, which is not considerable, by the way.
Way of compressing it like a piston, a way of firing.
Again, you're getting that for free by just putting it in a piston that's hooked up to a little wheel that spins it back around for the upstroke.
So all of this like engineering work has already been done.
Yeah.
Right?
And
so you don't have to invent the way to do it every time. Right?
And he seems to be pretending that you need a specific extra mechanism to push the piston up versus down, and it's like, no, it's the same mechanism.
It off like a spark plug, a whole system.
Yes, that's the first thing he's named so far that is actually an extra part that you need on top of just having the piston that cycles up and down, that needs to be carefully timed, and you do need the spark to go off at the top of the upstroke on the piston. That's fair.
Of electrical, just to get the spark to fire at the right time. Then you got to have a very complicated drivetrain to transfer this energy to the back wheels. No.
No, you don't. You need a simple drivetrain, but a complicated one can be even more useful. Right? Just some basic gears can transfer this motion from the engine to the rear wheels or the front wheels. Now, if you're going to do it to the front wheels, it does have to be a little bit more complicated if you're steering with the front wheels, but also there are vehicles that steer with the rear wheels. So you have a lot of options.
It's not correct to say adding energy solves the problem.
No, it's not correct to say that it always can reduce entropy in a system. But you picking, one, a bad analog for biology, and two, a system where it actually does improve the problem, doesn't really help anything, Kent. Which I'm just going to take a drink because this example is stupid on multiple ways.
It's really stupid.
You have to have something to use the energy. The Japanese added all kinds of energy to Pearl Harbor one time. Didn't organize a thing for us.
Hey, you know what? I think this is the first time that Kent has referenced World War II, and it wasn't Godwin's Law.
Yeah, right?
So good job, Kent. Oh, and you know what I'm realizing? There's something weird about how I have my chat set up here. So let me see if I can't fix that, because I want people to be able to see like the names and whatnot.
Oh, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of cut off of it.
So sorry about that, guys. I'm gonna see if I can't. I know, right? So let me. There we go. Sorry, I don't know. I must have done something with that at some point. Anyway, here we go.
A couple years later, we returned the favor and added energy to a couple of their cities, didn't we?
Yes.
Didn't organize a thing. Adding energy is destructive. I don't know how the evolutionists don't get this.
Again, I'll just repeat.
Listen, when you're a growing young boy and you need more energy, you eat more food, you just blow up. Because adding energy is destructive.
Yeah.
Kent Hovind, probably.
So, like I said, the fact that Kent can find examples that meet his bias doesn't mean that counterexamples don't exist. And we know of many of them, many of which are organically significant.
The sun adds energy to your house, but it's going to destroy the roof on your house. The houses are in serious disrepair, just sitting in the sun. The roof on your car will be destroyed.
There are houses in disrepair. That's
Right.
a thing. There are other houses that are sitting in the same sunlight that aren't.
Yeah.
By the sun's energy. The upholstery in your car is going to be destroyed by the sun. Not built, destroyed. The paint job is going to be destroyed.
I'm going to see if he stops just listing things
on your car
like this. Did it not work?
Did what not work?
Oh my goodness. Did I just crash this? I did. Sorry, everybody.
I don't know what's going on. Oh, that.
Yeah.
Well, I have an exact timestamp.
Well, we're going to start it back up and reshare and see what happens. Oh. Wrong player. My goodness. Technical difficulty. I don't know. Every once in a while, that just, like, I just get a crash.
It's one of those days.
Yeah, it is one of those days, you know?
It's one of those days, and
I've looked hard at it.
You know, you just got to deal with it. Keep moving
Not
on,
science.
moving forward.
What was the timestamp you had?
The evolutionists will assume
I sent it to you in message 11345.
113:45. Oh, that's definitely not where we are right now. So let me share this with you because I don't think I'm sharing it currently. So share. Let's see. Sorry about this, everybody. Technical difficulties. All right, here we go. 113. What was it?
45.
1 113. We're going to just go like 114 and see what happens. There we go. Oh, look, we've got a misstating of the second law of thermodynamics. So here we go.
Evolution theory is destroyed.
Okay.
The paint job is going to be destroyed on your car. There's only one thing that can actually use the sun's energy, and that's chlorophyll. Plant cells. Each little plant cell is more complicated than a city.
Bent, are there
What
any...
if the city has plant cells in it, Kent?
Are there any chemicals besides chlorophyll that can be used for photosynthesis?
Yes, that purple one. What is it, retinol?
Retinol, yeah. So I'm just going to take a drink for Kent not knowing the very basics of, photosynthesis.
Yeah, you could do that, but more importantly, him not knowing the basics of, like, energy or the sun.
Right.
Or, molecules or smaller. Yeah.
And here's the thing, right? Modern photosynthesis is very complicated and Rube Goldbergian sort of situation, right? But the thing is, in order to get energy that you can use to just straight up drive cellular processes, it's like just get some ATP and ADP, you actually can cut out most of photosynthesis. Because a lot of what we currently refer to as photosynthesis is actually, a big part of it is getting the energy to form, like, polysaccharides and starches and sugars and whatnot. But you don't actually have to do that. You can just go directly to the energy and use it. And sure, it's going to be tough to get through the night without energy reserves. You're going to have to really shut a lot of things down. But, like, that's a possibility for organisms. And the other thing is, photosynthesis is not the first way that life gained energy. We have a good reason to think that Luca, the last universal common ancestor, actually was probably chemosynthetic and was probably taking things like hydrogen sulfide and breaking down that chemical and getting its energy that way. And where does hydrogen sulfide come from? Yeah, volcanoes, basically. So it was probably hanging out at deep sea vents, which is still a way that bacteria get their energy today. And chemosynthetic bacteria, breaking down things like hydrogen sulfide, are the basis for the food chain at hydrothermal vents right now. And that's a very, very simple process, especially given what a simple molecule hydrogen sulfide is.
It's a very simple molecule or smaller.
Yeah.
Evolution violates the second law of thermodynamics.
I want to repeat, see my discussion with Sal Cordova on this channel about that. Because Sal gave a very nice presentation on why this argument is really bad. And creationists, him being one, shouldn't use it.
Link in the description. Ha, now you have to put the link in the description.
You jerk.
No,
Evolution theory is wrong. First and second thermodynamic, they are laws, okay? Not theories. They're laws.
Okay, I'm going to take a drink because Kent doesn't know the difference between a theory and a law. A law is a mathematical expression that describes what we've observed in phenomena. They're not set in stone. They can and have changed in the past, and some things that we think of as laws now may change in the future. For example, take Newton's laws. Newton's laws are currently not the actual laws of motion, because Einstein noticed ways in which they are incorrect at certain scales, and so now we actually have a more complete version of them that involves things like, relativistic effects. Now, for your everyday life, doesn't matter much. But on the scale of, like, the universe, or even just the solar system, it does matter. So, yeah, laws can change. They're not set in stone. They're not proven. So here we go with more Kent.
There are no known exceptions to those. Evolution is actually not even a good theory. It's a religion.
Oh.
I'm not even going to explain why evolution isn't a religion. I've done it too many times. But
see previous episodes of Kent Defense.
It is true that to be a law, there has to be no known exceptions. But that's because when exceptions happen, which they do, we modify the law to account for the exceptions. That's what happens.
More accurate?
Right. So, yeah.
This textbook shows the kids a fossil starfish. And it says,
That is not a starfish. I am taking a drink. That is a crinoid, or a crinoid, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I don't care. It is more closely related to modern crinoids, which they still exist. There are not many of them, but also feather stars, which, if you've never seen a feather star, like look up videos of feather stars on YouTube. They're really cool. Anyway, they are echinoderms, which they do have in common with starfish. But starfish and crinoids are basically like sister groups, and starfish abandoned the life of a sessile suspension feeder with its mouth facing up, and instead turned into active predators, granted of slow-moving and or sessile creatures, with their mouth facing down. They're not the same thing. They are related, though. So, yeah.
it's right here, plain as day. They're 3.4 billion years old. The remains of the early ancestors of modern human beings.
Wait, is Kent trying to say that that crinoid is a human ancestor?
I think that he thinks, listen, we all know how horrible his understanding of evolution is, so.
Okay.
I think he thinks it's all linear.
I'm going to try.
That just came from an amoeba that turned into a giraffe that turned into that starfish.
I'm going to play it again and see if that's what he actually thinks. And if it is, we're taking a big old gulp.
The kid's a fossil starfish. And it says right here, plain as day, they're 3.4 billion years old. The remains of the early ancestors of modern human beings.
I think that's what he thinks, and I'm taking a drink for it because that's amazingly stupid.
Was your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa a starfish?
No, and here's why, right? Echinoderms and vertebrates meet at the point of deuterostomia, which is a word that I know Kent doesn't know because I've heard him try to say it before. Deuterostomia is characterized as, one, they're bilaterians in common with protostomes, which are things like, insects, crustaceans, lots of things are protostomes, mollusks. But deuterostomes in embryo, they have a little dent in the blastocyst, right? So you form a sphere of cells called a blastocyst. And one side starts to develop a little dimple. In deuterostomes, that dimple becomes the anus, and another dimple on the other side forms to become the mouth. In protostomes, the dimple forms and becomes the mouth, and then it actually just pushes all the way through to the other side of the blastocyst. So there isn't a second dimple that forms until that end gets there. And then that tube connecting the two sides of the blastocyst becomes the GI tract. So at a certain point, all deuterostomes were literally nothing but a butthole. And all protostomes were literally nothing but a mouth. And that is the thing that connects these organisms. And the weird thing is, there's no particular reason why embryology has to align this way. And it has to align up with other things like morphology and protein sequence and genetic sequencing to give us the same tree of life every single time, right? If God wanted to prove to later generations that evolution wasn't a thing, he could have just done something extremely simple, like just say, hey, the blastopore on humans develops into a mouth, it develops the mouth first. That's it. Well, all you gotta do. And that would right there be a huge problem for evolution. But that's not what happens. And so echinoderms branch off before even skeletons are a thing, right? They are unsegmented, so they probably branch off before segmentation evolves in the line leading to chordates. And they also have various other unique adaptations, like they have a unique chemistry for their skeletons. They lose bilateral symmetry as they develop, so they actually have bilaterally symmetrical larvae. But then as the larvae grows into an adult, its left side gets really big and starts to spread around, and its right side atrophies until they have this radial symmetry, which is usually pentaradial, so they have 5 axes of symmetry that you can draw. And yeah, they're extremely distantly related to chordates, and they are not at all ancestral to humans in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to take a drink because that was a lot of dumb that I had to explain.
Here's Discover Magazine, November 2004. Was your ancestor a sea sponge?
That's a little bit less crazy because most most cladistic analyses in phylogenetics recover sponges as the most basally branching metazoan, which is animal, and they probably have some similarities, at least anatomically, to the earliest animals. But again, it's really not the case that the common ancestor between sponges and, say, humans would have looked very much like a sponge. And for $5, Carrie Bronson says, at a certain point, you were nothing but a butthole. Some people never develop beyond that, it would seem. Someone much more clever than I. I think actually Aaron Ross said that. I think he said that in his like video exchange thing with Hovind, which was kind of a debate. It's weird, and if you want to watch the whole thing, that's going to take a long, long time. But yeah, I believe Aaron Rod did say that, and he's right about that. Some people never did develop beyond that point. The kind of people who go to jail for putting their girlfriend in the hospital. Which, by the way, currently, Cindy Lincoln is scheduled to be on the channel towards the end of the month. So I think it's like last Saturday of the month. Cindy Lincoln is somewhat tentatively scheduled. I've spoken to her. I've texted her because she gave me her phone number, so we texted and we set that up. I'll probably call to confirm later down the road. So yeah, but hopefully Cindy Lincoln will be on the channel.
They've got a picture with the arrow here. It shows a sea sponge. It says, "This is your ancestor."
Yeah, I don't like the way that this is being put forth.
It's clickbait.
It's
I mean,
clickbaity.
really, it's Discover magazine. This is...
Yeah, it's not.
They're trying to grab your attention, get you to buy it because you don't know anything about science. That's why you're buying Discover magazine.
Yeah. So
in the airport, in between flights, right? I mean,
so I'm not happy with how this is put out, and if Kent were to say we shouldn't be talking like this, I would agree. It's not the way we should be talking. Also, there's a tube worm there that is not a sponge. Some of that might be sponge, but some of it is definitely not.
Wow, who's your daddy? SpongeBob.
Did we find the origin of Kent's SpongeBob obsession?
maybe.
Because that's one of the weirder things about Kent, is that despite being way out of the age demographic for being a SpongeBob fan, he seems to really like SpongeBob. And I
don't get it.
Yeah, it's weird.
I have a hard time understanding who would make a cartoon so dumb. SpongeBob SquarePants. What?
People who want to make money. Because, like Mr. Crab said, I like money.
Huh? I don't understand why it's popular. I watched about 5 minutes of it one time and said, this is an insult to my intelligence.
Yeah, Kent, you're not in the target demographic.
I don't think it's an insult to Ken's intelligence.
Existence
I agree,
is an insult to his intelligence?
I agree that the show, like, he is clearly not the intended demographic. But as someone who actually watched a whole lot of SpongeBob, I can imagine I could probably find something in SpongeBob that is just so much smarter than things Kent Hovind says. So,
yeah.
Who knows?
This is stupid. Well, here, this textbook author said 30 million years ago, larger primates such as monkeys and apes evolved. There's that word evolved. You got to watch that word, okay? And whenever you see this millions of years ago,
because they're going to use that when they're talking about evolution,
right? Like, what else would they do? Yeah, taking a drink for it. Watch out when they say evolve. Yeah, it's a book about evolution, man.
What it really means is long ago and far away.
Actually, it doesn't really. I mean, 30 million years ago, I guess, yeah, it's a long time ago. But far away, I actually live not too far from the earliest primate fossils, and many, many people live not too far from the earliest ape fossils, and many other people, and some of the same people, live very close to the earliest hominin fossils. I mean, you don't have to go that far in many cases to find some of these things. Fun fact, the earliest primates are in North America. So if you live in the United States or Canada, or I guess northern Mexico, you're actually pretty close to what are some potentially primate-bearing fossil strata.
The fairy tale's coming next, okay? 30 million years ago, these critters evolved. It says they're ancestral to both humans and modern apes. Ancestors to humans?
Yeah.
Grandpa?
No, because that's a modern prosimian. That's an ii, which is not
Not an
ancestral
ancestor to
humans.
modern humans and
Because-
modern apes.
One of the things that Kent can't understand is the idea of divergence, so that modern organisms have an ancestor that isn't either of them. Kent seems to think that if humans evolved from something that's like a monkey, right? Because the common ancestor of all monkeys would be itself a monkey by definition, that must mean that modern monkeys are the ancestors of humans, but that simply isn't how it works. It's confusing ancestry, or it's confusing your ancestors with your cousins, basically, right?
Right.
You
Things that I don't think they do in SpongeBob. I don't think they make that confusion, but I could be
No.
wrong.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen every episode of SpongeBob, or even really all that many.
I haven't seen much of it.
So,
I may have seen less than Kent has seen.
also, eyes are cool. They have a really, really, really long, I think it's the middle finger, and they use it to like poke into underneath bark and whatnot and spear like grubs, and then they pull it out and eat it. And they have really big, weird eyes, and they're cool. Yeah. Wait, it's not an eye?
Nobody
Wait,
nobody
are we
thinks
sure it's not
they're
an
your
eye?
grandfather.
What is it? Megan Fox's Giant's Boob might be correcting me on this one, which is great because look, I'm not a primate expert, and I don't want to get like angry emails from Erica. So
I'll say that no matter what it is. Or is that Tarsier? I think it
oh
says
yeah,
in
you
this
know
one.
what? Eyes do have
Look,
darker, less and more
they're
sparse
not-
fur. Whatever.
They're not. Nobody
Is that a
thinks
bush
that
baby?
they're your grandfather.
Wait, is that a bush baby? Bush baby. Nope. No, it's not.
It doesn't matter.
It matters a little bit to me. But here we go. So Megan Fox's giant boobs, let me know. Fix my mistakes on this.
What big eyes you have, Grandpa?
Yes,
No.
nocturnal primates tend to have big eyes.
No, they're not your grandpa, Kent. No one thinks that.
Oh, the better to see you with my boy. And here we are teaching the kids they're animals, and they act like animals, and some
As opposed to what, plants? You think kids are plants, Kent? I can't sometimes with Kent.
people can't seem to figure out why.
All right, it's definitely not an eye. Well, tell me what it is so I can make the correction, guys. Don't just tell me what it's not. Tell me what it is.
You don't need to be a genius to figure this out, folks. Barbara Reynolds in her article said, your kids go ape in school? Here's why. He's being taught evolution.
Some lady said once in an editorial that misbehavior among children is caused by learning evolution.
Real people named Johnetta and Johnny.
I mean, I don't even know what to do with that. It's an editorial in a newspaper. What? Okay, the Venerable Beat says it's a tarsier, but like that's a really broad category of animals. Like, which tarsier is it? Which tarsier? Help me out with this. Which tarsier is it? Because if I remember correctly, there's several species, but yeah, it is a tarsier. Oh, and they're haplorhines. So I was wrong that it was a prosimian entirely. Oh, wait, no. Yeah, because I'm thinking strepsirrhine. Look, you know what, guys? I'm not a primate guy. This isn't about dinosaurs, so I get it wrong.
She could figure out, if you teach a kid he's an animal, guess what he's going to act like?
A plant. No, an animal.
Yeah, which is how humans act, because humans are animals.
It's
Because
how that kid's acted his whole life, or hers.
other than the very basic things like food acquisition and like, I don't know, expelling waste or something, there's no one thing that animals act like. Like, coral is an animal. It doesn't act like a bear. And bears don't act like whales. And whales don't act like mosquitoes, right? There's no one way that animals act. Well, because there's more than one kind of tarsier, and I want to know what kind of tarsier it is. It says after Megan Fox asks, "You said it was an eye. Why are you asking for anything more specific?" Well, isn't it? Because I don't know. I want more specificity. But then again, maybe I don't need it. Because what would I do with it?
An animal. This textbook's used in Escambia County, Florida. This county right here. Until a couple years ago, I think they got another one. It says you are an animal.
Mm-hmm.
And share a common heritage with earthworms.
Very distantly, but yeah. I mean, I think that goes to like bilateria, which is just animals with bilateral symmetry.
Well, then again, how do you tell right from wrong?
It doesn't matter.
What?
I'm taking a drink for the complete non sequitur.
Yeah.
Kent, there is no moral philosophy, including divine command theory, which depends on humans not being related to earthworms through common ancestry. None. Not even a single one. It doesn't matter for Kantianism. It doesn't matter for virtue ethics. It doesn't matter for divine command theory. It doesn't matter for consequentialism. None of it. It never matters. It matters just as much as what's true about, like, I don't know, like, various, like universal gravitation or germ theory of disease, right? At most, it can inform your moral decisions based on things that you now know to be true that you otherwise wouldn't have without the theory, right? So like the germ theory of disease can affect what things you regard as moral or immoral in the sense that it allows you to know how to prevent or cause additional spread of disease, which is one of the reasons why, by the way, I think it's immoral to be an anti-vaxxer, because you have the information available to you to make the right decision on that one, and you are not, and you are measurably causing suffering, which would be avoidable, and I have trouble finding any moral philosophy that says that that's okay. But I'm sure other people will disagree with me. I'm not really having the moral philosophy, like, debate, but, yeah. And, by the way, Kent is an anti-vaxxer. As was his second quote-unquote wife.
I'm just an animal?
No, you're not just an animal. That's stupid. Things aren't just an animal. They are animals. There's nothing wrong with being an animal. Being an animal doesn't reduce your value as anything. Right? Just I hate that. I'm just an animal. No, you're not just anything.
Okay. I think we have a serious problem.
I'm just gonna drink for a random picture of Guy for no reason.
For no reason.
There wasn't even an attempt. I think the idea is supposed to be this is an example of someone acting in a way that Kent Hovind doesn't like. But like having a funny hairdo and I guess smoking. I mean, I don't recommend smoking, but like I don't think it's like immoral to smoke. Maybe if you're like, blowing secondhand smoke into a baby's face or something. John Smith says moral philosophy of Father Nurgle. Yeah, okay, I can see that if you're a worshiper of Father Nurgle, and then divine command theory might actually make it a good idea to be an anti-vaxxer. And, yeah. I actually think that Karen would be like an actual champion of Grandfather Nurgle if Grandfather Nurgle was actually a real thing. Yeah. Anyway.
On this planet because of what we're teaching the kids. If you go to a society where they're headhunters,
okay,
they believe, when you kill somebody in battle, cut off his head and you will get his spirit. Suppose some kid is taught from the time he can understand. Now, son, if we go to war and you kill an enemy, be sure to cut his head off and eat his brains because, then you will get his spirit and you'll be twice as strong.
I'm actually not aware of any cultures that are usually taking heads as trophies in war who are also usually cannibalizing. Now, I'm not saying it's not a thing, but most cannibal cultures that I'm aware of either are eating significantly higher proportions of war victims, basically, like not just the head, or they're eating fellow members of their own society as part of a funeral ritual. So I think Kent, like I said, I'm not positive. I'm not an anthropologist. I don't study all these various groups of people. But that sounds off to me. But I don't think it matters much for the point he's making. I'm just saying I don't think that this is a thing in the way that Kent Hovind thinks it is. But maybe it is.
What's that kid going to do when he goes to battle against an enemy? He's going to cut his head off and eat his brains.
That's true. If that's what you were taught from childhood, that is what you would do. I'll take a drink.
What you believe determines how you behave.
That's also true. I'll
You
take a
tell
drink.
some Muslim kid, okay, kid, now listen. If you die in the cause of Islam and you can take a Christian or a Jew with you, if you die in the process of killing a Jew, you will become a martyr.
Yeah, no, that's... Oh my goodness. Look, there are enough terrible interpretations of martyrdom within Islam that you don't have to make them up. So let's take a drink here before we unfortunately dive a little bit into some versions of Islamic theology, which itself needs some drinking, I think. Okay. The thing that, according to many schools of thought in Islam, is the only thing that guarantees you entrance to paradise on your death is dying as a martyr, which can be a few different things. But one of the biggest things that you find in Islamic history is that you die in a military jihad. Now, it is true that the word jihad just means struggle, and it can include other things than military conflict. But it is also true that throughout history, the primary thing that was meant by the word jihad when used in a religious context was in fact a war. But it wasn't about killing Christians or Jews in particular. It was about fighting people who were resisting the political dominance of Islam, whether they were Muslims, Jews, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, whatever, right? It doesn't, their religious identity doesn't matter. Further, in almost every school of thought in Islam, there are Jews and Christians who are protected under Islamic law, who you are not allowed to just go kill, and doing so is in fact more likely to get you sent to hell than paradise. You can't just go randomly blow yourself up, and if it takes a Jew or a Christian with you, according to basically any school of thought in Islam, that ushers you automatically into paradise. That's not how Islam works in any school of thought I'm aware of, and I've looked at a fair few. Like, that's not a thing. It's very frustrating that Kent can't even get religion right.
And if you can tie bombs to yourself and walk into a crowded marketplace and blow up yourself and kill a bunch of people, you get to go to heaven and get 72 virgin wives all tied to the couch hollering, oh, come over, me next, okay? And
that got a little bit more adult than I was thinking, although I don't think that Kent meant it that way, but phrasing, Kent. Phrasing.
They're taught this. That's what they're taught.
Not really. So, I don't want to get into the details, but it's actually a fairly fringe view that suicide attacks are per se, especially against civilian targets, are per se a valid way to become a martyr in Islam. There are a lot of schools of thought. Granted, not all of them. There are, like I said, some fringe groups who would disagree, but most groups in Islam would say that you actually have to be in some kind of actual war and attacking military targets, or at the very least, attacking targets which, when you defeat them, you can get loot from, which will then enrich the Islamic community. So, yeah, it's... No, Kent, this is... I can't say the view doesn't exist at all, but it's extremely fringe and is not typical of even the more conservative varieties of Islam. I feel like I need to go get my Islamic book of Sharia law off of the shelf. It's in the next room, but not right now.
And you get some kid whose hormones develop 5 years before the brain, which is what almost every case. And what's he going to do? He turns 19 years old.
It's because of the virgins. That's what he's going with.
He can't find a job. You know, economy's pretty poor. Hey, I want to go to heaven, you know. They tie bombs around themselves and go blow themselves up in the middle of a crowded shopping market. Shopping mart. What you believe determines your behavior.
That is true.
That is
I'll still
true
take a drink
of
for
every
it.
single religion. That's true of in so many areas of life. You be careful what you believe. You tell the kids they're an animal, they act like animals, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
What who told Kent what to make him act the way he acts
Yeah,
in
that's a
his
good
religious
question.
beliefs, right? Because I'm a Christian. I don't feel like I need to lie almost every time I open my mouth.
You also, as far as I know, don't feel like you need to beat your domestic partners.
No, no. There are some issues I would have with the Islam religion, but I don't think I would need to make up lies about it or what it teaches. Although I don't really know what it teaches, but I do
Oh,
feel like you would know more than Ken does about it.
Kent's not the one who's making up these lies. There are other people who have made up those lies, and he's taking them.
Yeah, but for someone who pretends to want to tell the truth, he sure doesn't care about lying very much. And I just wonder, what he believes that determines the way he acts. Like, what does he believe that's okay for him to just blatantly lie about things?
Actually, I think I know. So Kent he's an easy believist. So he believes that what it takes for you to be saved is at any point for you to believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that he died for your sins, and then to ask him to come into your heart and be the Lord of your life. And even if the next day or the next hour you stop believing all of it, because at some point you sincerely said a sinner's prayer and you believed sincerely, that's it, you're saved. And Kent also believes that he can earn a better place in heaven by getting more souls. So Kent, I think, finds that to be justification to do almost anything as long as he can say that he got people to sincerely say a sinner's prayer while believing in something that is close enough to what he believes about Christianity that it counts in his mind.
Yeah, he might be dumber than I've been giving him credit for.
It is hard to overestimate how dumb Kent Hovind is. And also, that idea is an extremely fringe idea in Christianity itself. It's not at all the majority of Christians who believe that. It is fairly common where Kent ends up in places like, the southeast United States with a lot of Baptists and whatnot. But like overall in Christianity, that is not the common belief about how salvation works.
You're just an animal. I have seen a tragic change in the last 40 some years since I was in school, grade school. Something's changed, folks.
What?
Big time radical change.
I mean, okay, so this was in the early 2000s. So I think 2005 or so. So 40 years before that would be the 60s. So from the 60s to the 80s, violent crime was going up. But then from the 80s on until now, it's been going down. So, I mean, it's not even like school shootings in the United States have actually been going up during that time. What has happened is that reporting on them has gone up. But, if you actually look at, violent crime trends in the United States, they're on a decline. The United States is getting safer, and has been for decades. And had been for decades when Kent Hovind said this. So, and during that time, the proportion of time spent on evolution only went up because there were fewer and fewer creationist challenges to it, and it was harder and harder to get creationists to make up school boards without legal challenge. So, yeah, I don't know what point Kent is trying to make here, but I'm pretty sure he's trying to do the world is getting worse, we're headed down the drains, and it's all evolution's fault.
When I was a kid in grade school, kids got in trouble, for throwing spit wads.
They still do.
I stood with my nose in the circle on the chalkboard several times, for... Now, look at the stuff they get in trouble for,
What?
Bringing guns to school, killing somebody,
All right, here we go. First school...
Wasn't it like the
USA.
1860s or something like that? I feel like I've looked this up on Kent with Bent 12 or something like that.
I think we probably did, yeah. So, let's see. First school shooting, November 12th, 1840. 1 death. Next
It's
one.
1840?
Yeah, 1840. This is just the USA, right? 1853, 1 dead. 1856, 2. 1858, 1. 1861. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, look at this. In 1898, 6. That counts as a mass shooting.
1896.
Let's see. Where I'm just looking for really big ones, right? So, let's see. There was, I think I saw 5, but I just lost it, and I don't want to scroll back up. So, 18 in 1966, when Kent Hovind is talking about. 18 people dead, 31 injured in a school shooting in 1966. I know.
To be fair, if we're going exact, he did say last time that this was in 2005.
Yeah.
So that's a year after
Oh,
1965.
okay.
A
But
lot's changed in that 1 year.
yeah, it's just like you can't actually validly support the idea that, at least adjusting for population, that schools are getting way more deadly. They just aren't. I mean, there's a steady stream throughout all of the past few decades of like shootings resulting in 1 or 2 deaths, 2 or 3 injuries, sometimes neither, but there's still guns going off. And yeah, it's just not the case that there's this crazy increase that you can correlate with evolution of school violence. It's just not the case. We're now more serious about it. We report it more often, and it's actually taken as a national tragedy that rather than just a act of violence that people only locally care about, which I think is an improvement in how we react to these acts of violence. But it's just not the case that it's like going up in some crazy, unprecedented way. It just isn't. I mean, you can just look at the statistics and look at the lists of school shootings in the United States. Now, every school shooting is one too many, right? There shouldn't be any. But the idea that kids never got in trouble for bringing a gun to school before evolution became a major thing that's just not how anything works.
Drugs. Man, when I was in school, and if some girl got pregnant before she was married, it was an embarrassment, and she dropped out of school, and now they're running around the hall all the time like that.
Well, first, okay, look, it's been a while since I was in school, but I don't remember just gaggles of pregnant girls running around or something. But yeah, I think it's a progress that we now have gotten to the point where we can say, hey, teen pregnancy doesn't have to end your life. Like, I don't think anyone is going to argue that it's a great thing for teenagers to go get pregnant. It's definitely something best avoided, which, by the way, I'm sure Kent would be abstinence only in terms of his sex education, which has been known very definitively to actually increase the rate of teen pregnancy. What does decrease the rate of teen pregnancy is things like teaching about safe sex and contraception, while also, I would say, pointing out that, yes, abstinence is in fact an option that will prevent you from becoming pregnant. But if you pretend that kids are just going to rely on abstinence, it's just not going to work. There's a reason why abstinence-only states in the United States have higher rates of teen pregnancy. And for 50 Argentinian pesos, Tiktaalik says, considering how fecal Kent is, and with the current news about him, he is probably lamenting the lowering in crime rates. Yeah. Yeah, Kent's in a world of not great stuff right now. I was gonna swear, but I don't want to. Anyway, yeah, we'll go with more Kent. Let's see what he's got here, and then I think we're gonna take a quick break because we're already past the halfway mark, and usually we take a break around then. So one more thing from Kent, and then we're gonna take a quick break.
It's not a big deal. I am so convinced that this theory of evolution is not only dumb, it's dangerous, that I've dedicated my life to doing what I can to stop it, set the record straight.
Well, you're doing a really poor job, Kent, because year over year, the proportion of American adults who accept the evolution of humans from non-human primates has gone up and up and up.
And
The rock music
helped me leave young Earth creationism.
Yeah, actually, that's true.
He's a pretty significant, because it was pretty significant because I watched him growing up, never heard legitimate rebuttals to it, and then watching him with Dapper, even before we were doing Kent with Bent, he's like, no, Kent's wrong because of this, or because of that, and then I click a link or something, and it's like, okay, yeah, thank you, Kent, for helping me leave young Earth creationism.
Yeah, honestly, if Kent weren't so bad at this, Bent here might still be a young Earth creationist. And yeah, Vishanti points out that teen pregnancies have dropped by a lot, and that's true. If teaching evolution were going to increase teen pregnancies, we should be seeing it go up, not down, but it is going down. And the only places where it's not going down, or it's not going down as quickly, are the places where they're doing what Kent would like, where they're minimizing the teaching of evolution and using things like abstinence-only programs. Because look, here's the thing, right? You're not going to stop teenagers from having sex. You just aren't. It's not an option. It would be nice if that were a thing that could happen. And I'm sure that teaching kids not to go have sex as teenagers, some of them will listen, but some of them won't. And since they're going to be doing it anyway, you might as well teach them how to do it with the lowest risk possible. It's sort of like, you know, kids are going to speed. So at least teach them what the importance of a seatbelt is, right? You should tell them, hey, maybe don't speed. But you know they're not all going to listen. And you can say, oh, I shouldn't make it safer for them to do the wrong thing. And I disagree. You should. If you know someone's going to do the wrong thing, but it's not necessarily something that has to, like, you know, ruin their life or something, teach them how to do it safely, right? I think it's that simple, because the other option just results in worse outcomes. So anyway, now that we have almost certainly ruined any chance of monetization for this stream, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in about 3-ish minutes. I still haven't created a new intermission video. If anyone has ideas for what I should do for it, let me know. But as it is, you're still getting Lord Zed beating up some Power Rangers. So, sorry about that. We will be back in just a few.
Time for action!
When I want your opinion, I'll give it to you.
Back to action!
2, 1, fight!
We're not backing down! Can I help you? Tag team! Yeah! Not mine! This is gonna hurt.
Zero in on my coordinates.
This time you're mine. Megazord, ready!
Tyrannosaurus!
I am Lord Zed, Emperor of all he sees.
Okay, and we are back. And I didn't even accidentally replay the opening video. which I almost did. I was about a half a second away from doing it, but whatever. We are back. We're going to get some more Kent Hovind in. I actually thought we would get through this bit faster. We've still got like 3.5 minutes worth of Kent, which is kind of crazy. But then again, I guess this whole video has been really, really like high concentration dumb. So
He also did some preaching in like the middle of it instead of at the end. So
yeah. Well, let's see what we get.
These days is all full of death and destruction and blood. Well, the Bible says they that hate me love death. You can
Okay.
watch the Hollywood movies. There's always some destruction or death or blood in these movies these days. They don't build things, they tear things down.
Yeah, it's almost like people like stakes in their movies because then they can get emotionally invested, right?
I saw a movie about a guy who built an ark.
There
It was
you go.
called Evan Almighty.
Yeah, there's also, I mean, there are actually movies about people building things. It's just that, yeah, conflict is a thing that people like in movies, and violence is a way to up the stakes immediately. That's just how humans work. Sorry, Kent. I know.
I mean,
you
it's
don't know how the
it's
humans
true.
work.
Like movies don't reflect real life. I mean,
No.
yeah, violence exists in real life, but geez, if you thought real life was like movies, you'd be terrified to go outside. You'd expect to get shot almost every day. So
Oh, and cars
Yeah.
would basically be bombs, even though, spoiler alert, in order to make a car explode, you just need to put a bomb in it. You can't just explode a car by crashing it.
my favorite thing is when they explode from all these different angles, but every time you see a new angle, it's just there, not exploded again. The longer they have it sit there, not exploded, the better.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
What is this doing psychologically to prepare people for a coming revolution of some kind?
What? Where did that come from? Taking a drink? I have no idea what just happened.
What revolution is Kent planning
I don't know.
or expecting?
Apparently, violent movies are preparing you for the revolution. I don't. So does that mean that what was the violent media that prepared the, say, American colonists for the American Revolution, or the French citizens for the French Revolution? I would like to, or heck, the communists for the Bolshevik Revolution. Was it the violent movies? I don't even know where that came from.
I don't know
Okay,
what
we're
he's
just-
talking about.
We're just gonna hit play and see if he tells us.
There's a revolution, though, so
Yeah.
expect it, I guess.
Oh, yeah, we got to go tear this world down so we can build a new. That's what the Phoenix is all about.
What
The one
Phoenix?
world order, new world order plan, you know, is
I'm
to
taking a drink.
tear everything down and build a new one world order. That's Satan's plan, okay? That's not God's plan.
Revolutions are from Satan, apparently, except I guess the American Revolution, because I'm sure Kent likes that one. I don't know if it's Kent who's planning a revolution. I think he's saying Satan is going to have a revolution. Somehow,
I don't know what he's saying.
it's very weird.
But
There's a
to be
long,
fair,
you know,
he
thing
also
about all
doesn't
that.
know
Anyway,
what he's
We'll
saying.
talk more about that
Yeah.
next week. About what you believe determines your behavior. Kids are taught there are no absolutes. I had a professor say that to me one time. He said, there are no absolutes. I said, are you absolutely sure? Blew his little brain. Now, wait a minute. How can I be absolutely sure there's no absolutes?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm sure you blew his brain.
Yeah, so it is in fact the case that there are logical problems about a moral philosophy that involves absolutely no objectivity in terms of self-consistency. This isn't news, and it still doesn't require divine command theory, because there's this thing where you can have objective moral philosophies that don't require divine command theory. Weird, right? Basically, all it takes to have an objective moral philosophy is to have a goal that morality is supposed to be striving towards, and then you can objectively find ways that are better or worse at meeting that goal, and they become objectively morally better or worse. Which is not the same thing as absolute morality, by the way. Absolute morality is objective, but not all objective morality is absolute. And I doubt that Kent realized the difference, but here would be the difference. If I said lying is absolutely wrong, that is me stating that it's objectively true that in all circumstances lying is bad.
Has anyone debated Kent on the topic of like, is evolution a religion?
I don't know if anyone has particularly because, like,
Because I know that you know
Yeah.
a lot about evolution and a lot about religion,
it might be an interesting topic.
but you probably don't want to dox yourself. So,
I'm not sure that making that debate would necessarily dox me.
well, because Kent makes people
Oh,
dox
right,
themselves
that's
to
true.
debate him.
I suppose I could just
But
give him a fake name. How's he
But
gonna
then
know?
he goes to prison. So, like, I don't even know if he's available for debates.
Well, he's only going to be there for 30 days, most likely. So,
Yeah, this time.
And we'll talk about absolutes in the next session. Any questions before we go? Yes, sir.
Yeah, we have a lot, but watch the episode to see that.
Thermo means heat, like a thermometer, thermostat.
Take a drink.
Okay. Dynamic is where we get our word dynamo, which means power.
Not quite. It means work or sometimes power. It's a little bit weird, but it's close enough to break. So I'll take a drink for that too.
So thermodynamic means heat power.
Yeah, basically.
Whenever there's an exchange of, you take a piece of wood and you burn it and you produce heat out of it, it is now gone to heat, but that heat is going to dissipate throughout the universe and you're never going to be able to get it back. You won't be able to use it twice.
That's also basically true, so I'll take a drink there. Kent's actually doing not a terrible job of defining what thermodynamics is and what kinds of systems it addresses. So,
Okay. Your body produces heat from the food you eat, okay, and it's gone. You got to eat some more.
also true. I'll take a drink for that too. Wow.
And then the next day you got to eat some more. It's a never-ending process. So
Wait, I thought
that's
adding
basically-
energy destroyed the system.
Yeah, he did say that, but no, Kent is actually giving a pretty good like bird's eye view of what the basic idea behind thermodynamics is. Like, what kinds of things is it about? So I'm actually a little bit impressed because it does mean that Kent Hovind at least knows what the topic is.
He
The
knows
word
enough to
thermo-
lie about it.
Well, yeah.
It's heat, and dynamics means power. So based on this, the laws of thermodynamics tell us that the whole universe is gradually using up all of its available energy, and it's going to be lost as heat.
Yeah, that's also true. I'll take it. Wow. Okay. Kent, you should do more of this and less ridiculousness about like teen pregnancy and drugs.
It's irretrievable. Outer space, deep space, is like 3 degrees Kelvin, which is minus 455.
So first, you don't measure Kelvin in degrees, it's just number Kelvin. Also, because temperature is a measure of the average random molecular kinetic energy in a system that basically doesn't have molecules like a hard vacuum, you can't really define a temperature. Instead, what you can define is a level of basically like energy flux going through the area, which would result in a body in that area having an equilibrium temperature of some given temperature. And he's not entirely wrong that 3 Kelvin is what you would roughly reach if you reach thermodynamic equilibrium with, just the surrounding universe as a body out in the middle of nowhere. That's roughly accurate. So it's just like, he's not entirely off base, but he's also not right.
He's actually demonstrating that he's read about things like this and knows about them,
Which,
but still will lie about them.
right, that's one of the things. It's just like,
And intentionally misunderstand, like, oh.
yeah, the fact that he knows these things, on the one hand, it's impressive that he is, not being a complete moron. But then it raises the question, okay, well, when he is being a complete moron, it's hard to take it as sincere ignorance, given that he does know this stuff.
Fahrenheit? I mean, cold. If all of the stars burned up all of their fuel, which they eventually will,
True. Take a drink.
everything will be burned up. The whole universe now, instead of being minus 455, will probably be minus 454 and a half. Okay, we might be able to warm everything up a half degree by burning everything. It's called a heat death.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
it's
Take another
inevitable.
drink.
The universe will experience a heat death if
Good
it goes
song.
long enough because of the laws of thermodynamics. It's
Wow.
all winding down. It's all falling apart. It's losing its energy. But it's losing it to space, and it's irretrievable. Okay? Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Would you repeat the law of conservation?
We didn't really give a quote for that law, but if a spinning object explodes or breaks apart,
Oh,
the pieces
goodness.
will spin the same direction.
That's
One of
Oh.
it. Another part of the conservation laws are, if you concentrate the mass toward the center, the velocity picks up.
okay. It's really easy. The angular momentum of a system will stay the same if you disregard friction, which can actually cause it to change. So disregarding friction, the angular momentum of any given system will stay constant. That's it. That's all you have to say. Kent, you were
But
doing
it's
so well.
It's easier to just not define it and just make up long, convoluted sentences like mine is right now on how you want to lie or slightly mislead about it. All right, I'm done with that convoluted sentence.
There are quite a few laws regarding spinning objects, and that's just, I don't think I ever actually gave a particular quote for that one. I phrased the law. No. Okay, other questions? Good. See you next week.
It's a good question. Why wouldn't he just define the law? Does he not want
Yeah,
to?
that is a good question. He probably doesn't actually know it. That would be my guess. So, all right, here's what's going to happen. We are going to open up number 4. And then I'm going to share it with you because it's currently not sharing. Okay.
Welcome to our 4th class in
Thanks.
creation
Hold up,
science
hold up.
evangelism.
Why
purpose of
no
this class-
tie?
Yeah.
Where's your tie? This is awful.
Look, Kent, the best
No
part...
glasses, that's okay. It doesn't matter, but you gotta wear the tie.
The best part of Kent's look has always been the tie, and the fact that he now only wears Hawaiian shirts is, to me, disappointing because, look, credit where credit is due. In the past, Kent has had some cool ties.
They're not always great, but they're always interesting.
Right. So,
I always want to look at it right away.
yeah.
And I'm also, I don't really mind the Hawaiian shirt. Maybe not on Kent, but, in general.
It's not as cool
But-
as Kent's ties were.
But I'd rather see the ties. But,
Yeah.
we don't always get what we want.
Well, this means we're going to be stuck with this stupid purple shirt for a while now. Sorry.
Probably till December.
Ugh. All right, here we go.
Class, for those of you just joining us, is to prepare people to be better equipped to handle questions around the subject of creation, evolution, and dinosaurs. And we want our staff, a lot of our staff are taking the class here, to be better prepared to, they're more valuable as workers here if they know more about what we believe, what we teach, and why we teach it.
There's a second camera angle now.
Yeah.
And it's even closer and better. You can see do not touch the glass even more clearly than before.
Also, I want to point out that the workers he's talking about are the ones whose payroll taxes he didn't pay, which is why not too many years after this, he went to prison for nearly a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm actually going to come out and say I actually think the reason he's going to jail right now is much more serious, and it is very disturbing to me how much less time he's getting for putting a woman in the hospital than he got for not giving Uncle Sam the required donations. Like, not okay with that. There is no circumstance in which someone should be getting more punished for tax crimes than for actually hurting an identifiable human being. But that's me and my political / moral
You
philosophy.
value the
Yeah.
life of one innocent human over the government getting a few $1,000s of its billions and trillions of dollars of tax income.
As far as I'm concerned, Cindy Lincoln is much
I don't
more
disagree.
valuable than those taxes.
I don't disagree.
But you know what? I'm also not in charge of the United States justice system. If I were, it would be very different. But we're going to keep going before I start to get angry at the courts, which is not useful.
Of course, the object is to get everybody out teaching this. There needs to be thousands of people doing this. One of the goals. So we left off last week talking about the problems with our school system.
Tesla Ranger says Ken is out on bail, so is suspended. It's basically probation. So he did have a 1-year sentence suspended, but he is going to be required to spend 30 days in a county jail. And then he will be on 1-year probation. So he is actually going to be spending some time behind bars as a result of this, beyond what he already did when he was arrested. So, and that is based on the actual court documents in which he was found guilty, which I believe was a result of a plea deal, because there's no indication that there was actually a trial. there's just a judge finding him guilty. So I think there was a plea deal. I don't know for certain, but yeah,
That
And
judgment came down pretty quickly, right?
very quickly.
As far as I know.
Yeah, and Tesla Ranger says 30 days is a slap on the wrist. You're absolutely right. It's disgusting to me how leniently Kent is being treated on this. But, and it isn't just the 30 days, let's be honest. So he does have to turn in all of his firearms, which I think there are considerable firearms on the property. At least that's based on things his tech guy, Steve, has said. He's on camera saying, oh yeah, there's a lot of guns. So those all have to be turned in. He is on 1 year probation, although it's unsupervised. But still, it does mean that if he commits any offenses in that time, they're probably not going to slap him on the wrist. He also does have to pay a $500 fine, all the court fees, as well as all of Cindy Lincoln's fees, or not fees, but medical costs, which is totaling somewhere around, I think, $2,500. And he also has to pay taxes on those money, and I don't know exactly how that's going to work out, but so he's going to end up paying probably several $1,000s, which, again, I don't think that's enough for what he did, but I'm not in charge of Kent's sentence. I shouldn't be, because I'm biased against Kent, which wouldn't be fair.
Teaching the kids they're an animal, and sure enough, they act like animals.
I want to know what it is about this picture, other than the fact
like an animal.
that Kent, like, I get that Kent doesn't like the punk subculture, but I want to know specifically which about this things going on here does Kent think are specifically sinful. Like, he'll probably say smoking is sinful. I don't know, but like, are spiked collars sinful? Is spiky hair sinful? I want to know, Kent. Please let me know what it is about punk rock that is inherently sinful and evil.
And they can't seem to figure it out. Kids are taught today there are no absolutes. This is an extremely dangerous teaching in the school system about there are no absolutes.
I feel like
I was
I'm
at the
getting
University
deja
of
vu.
Wyoming night before last.
Here's what I'll
with a
do.
debate.
I'll drink for Kent making a prediction that on the next episode he would talk about this.
And he did, yeah, that's true.
Prediction true.
Up there in Laramie, Wyoming, with my son Eric. He's flying back right now. We're doing any second, actually.
His only son, Eric. No, he didn't say only.
He acts like it's his only son,
He
but
didn't
yeah,
say that.
technically you're right.
I'm not putting that
As-
on my notes.
For people who might not know, because maybe you're new or you're watching this after the fact and you're new to Kent with Ben, we have several times criticized Kent for ignoring his son Kent Andrew Hovind, because Kent Andrew is, or this is my supposition, I think it's because Kent Andrew Hovind is disabled, and I think that Kent is ashamed of him, which is why, other than occasionally opening bits with saying he has 3 kids, one of each, he only ever talks about Eric and his daughter, whose name escapes me at the moment.
I don't know her name either, but he does mention he mentions a son and daughter quite a bit without the other son.
Yeah. Also, weirdly enough, Kent Hovind's daughter's wedding, which was performed by him, is you can see footage of that publicly because he takes a call during it, and it ended up on America's Funniest Home Videos, which is weird to me.
I
But-
didn't know.
Yeah, he took a phone call during it, and yeah, it ended
I mean,
up on America's
I
Funniest
think I
Home
saw
Videos.
that clip, but I don't remember it being on that show.
Yeah.
You know, the professor was a philosophy professor. And it's very, very common in philosophy classes at secular universities for the teacher to tell the kids, now there are no absolutes.
I was not told that in my moral philosophy class or my intro to philosophy or my philosophy of Plato class.
I'm just going to need a little more context for what you really mean by that, Kent, because
I'm going to go
I don't
ahead
remember
and say
hearing that in a way that you're supposed to take literally true.
citation
Like-
needed on that one. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Why would they teach them that?
Oh, apparently Tesla Ranger says Kent's daughter is named Marlissa. That does sound familiar. He doesn't talk about her as much as Eric, but I presume that's probably because Eric is much more active in like the ministry, whereas I don't think Marlissa really is. Although Kent Hovind Jr. is also pretty active as a cameraman for Eric, so
Well, if there are no absolutes, then you can't say that's wrong. Because it might be wrong for you, but it's not wrong for me.
Tiktok asks, didn't Kent also put Junior in the hospital at some point? I'm actually not sure. I've heard stories about that, but not from sources that I would consider taking at face value. So, I I would need better sources before I would actually say that that's a thing that happened. And I've looked and been unable to find anything that was sourced in a way that I would find acceptable. So that's a maybe for me. I wouldn't put it past him, but I'm not willing to say it definitely happened, just because the only source I've ever found is a source that I put on about the same level as Kent Hovind, unless I can independently verify it.
And therefore, you might think it's wrong to commit adultery, but I don't think it's wrong to commit adultery. So, it's a way of salving their conscience is what it is.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick drink, and then we're going to talk about why it is that you can use non-divine command theory to show why adultery might be wrong. Okay, so when you marry someone, usually you both make it plain that you have a closed relationship and you are not to go step outside of the bounds of that relationship. And you both agree to this. So basically, because we have a society in which if everyone just felt free to just ignore the deals they made with other people, that would be bad for everyone. We can use numerous things like consequentialism, we can use Kantianism, we can even use virtue ethics, right? You don't want to be the guy who's dishonest. To say that, yes, in a case where you haven't both already agreed it's okay, stepping outside your marriage to find whatever, to cheat, basically, is wrong. In fact, you can even extend that to say, in situations where you're not married, it's still wrong if both you and your partner have an expectation of exclusivity. And in order to overcome that expectation, you need to have a conversation about it, because most people expect exclusivity. That's the default. So while I can't prove that adultery would always be wrong in all circumstances without some kind of divine command theory, I can show numerous ways in which it is almost always wrong for most people. So, yeah. Is it exactly what Kent Hovind would say? Well, no, because Kent Hovind would be like, it's always wrong no matter what because of divine command theory. And I'm not really here to argue against divine command theory right now, but I am here to say, yeah, you don't need divine command theory to show that adultery is, there's a presumption against it. Carrie Bronson for $5 says, the Void has a more coherent philosophy than Kent Hovind. Absolute absence is at least internally consistent and doesn't lead to compulsive lying. Yes, all praise the Void. Which, by the way, I don't know, there might end up being a Void stream while I'm off at the Grand Canyon. So, but it won't be announced. It'll just happen. So, keep your eyeballs peeled on YouTube in case there is one. Which is basically just, like, you can come and chat with other people who watch the channel. That's all it is. For hours, it's just there. It's basically a chat room for people who watch this channel. And then it goes private. And the only way to get a hold of it, again, is to ask me nicely. So, here we go. More Kent.
Okay? To say there are no absolutes. First of all, you can't have a world without any absolutes. I had a professor one time tell me, he said, there are no absolutes. I said, are you absolutely sure?
I'm pretty sure this is a conversation that happened. I'm going to take
Of course, that blew his little brain,
And yes, like we discussed earlier, there are philosophical problems with the statement that there is, in fact, nothing that is absolutely true, because that itself is a statement of absolute truth. Yes, there are internal conflicts there. It's one of the reasons why I do think that moral philosophies that involve some objectivity, as well as some absolute statements, they would have to be very broad, but I do think there is some validity to those. As I've told people before, my personal moral philosophy tends to be that in terms of what I think is morally obligatory, I tend to be a rules consequentialist, and then in terms of morally praiseworthy and how I end up actually like working on just how I want to act in the world, I tend to use sort of a virtue ethics framework where I think about what kind of person would I want to be, and what actions can I take that would make me into the person I would want to be. So
By person, you mean dinosaur person?
Yeah,
right.
Dinosaurs are people too, or at least they can be.
Well, they can be.
Yeah, many
I just want to
parents said,
know.
"What was he a Berkeley professor?"
Exactly. I just want to know because, like, obviously, you don't go to college, sit down in your class, and say, your professors, there are no absolutes.
No, that's never happened.
And then you sit down for 45 minutes or however long your class is, and then you leave. right? Like, don't. What's the context, Kent? Is what I'm getting at. Like, what did they actually say? Are you going to describe that, or just
Well, Kent's never actually been
ramble
to
a bit?
college, so he can't describe it because he doesn't know.
Yeah, but maybe he could pull a quote from something, right? Because he said that's what they teach the kids. Like, how would he know that, right?
Yeah.
So, where's his source? What did
Right.
they actually say?
Here we go.
He said, you're tricking me. I said, no, it's a logical statement. How can you be absolutely sure there are no absolutes? The kid I mentioned, I think in here one time about sophomore or senior in high school in Pennsylvania. I was speaking at a public school. Kid sat on the second row. He said, Mr. Hovind, I'm an atheist. He said, there's no God. I said, are you sure? He said, oh yeah, I'm sure. I said, well, now do you know everything? He said, no. I said, well, do you know
We're
maybe
taking a drink for
half of
conversations
everything?
that didn't happen.
He said, no, I don't know half of everything. I said, well, let's just pretend for a few minutes that you know half of everything. Is it
You already
possible then
established
that
you
God
didn't, Kent.
exists in the other half you don't know? Wow, brand new thought rattled around his brain for a while and got lost. And then I said, well, son, if you're
that
an
was a joke that
atheist and
didn't
there's no
land.
God, how do you tell right from
I
wrong?
think the whole thing might be a joke. That's tough.
He said, well, I decide what's right and wrong. He said, I'm the God of my own universe.
Okay, so at best, you found an atheist who didn't have a well-thought-out moral philosophy. Congratulations, Kent. That's even assuming this whole conversation actually happened, which I'm not willing to assume, but even if it did, again, you found an atheist who didn't have a well-thought-out moral philosophy. Guess what? That's a lot of people. I would say most people probably don't have a well-thought-out moral philosophy. That doesn't mean they don't have one, just not very well thought out. Because most people don't actually spend time thinking about things like that. Because
I mean, I think about things like that, but I never think about how am I defining this, or how would I define it
Yeah.
if I were to. Like, no, I would describe it. You could ask me 5 different days, and I would give you slightly different variations of the same thing every time, probably.
yeah,
But like, you could pick it apart and say, well, this contradicts that. It's like, well, I mean, no, people typically don't. Even when people like me, you kind of think about that a lot. Yeah, it's kind of hard to define.
by the way, because it came up in chat, if you want me to talk about corporate personhood, you're going to have to super chat about it, because there is no way I'm doing that for free.
And I said, well, I'm glad to hear about that, son, because I'm going to shoot you in 5 minutes. He said, you can't do that. I said, well, sure I can. You see, I'm the God of my own universe, and I decided it's fine for me to shoot you.
It's true. Kent
What's
does
wrong with that
believe
logic?
that he is the god of his own universe.
I actually don't think he does, but it is
I
funny.
think he does. I think he does, because I think in his mind, what he thinks of as God is actually just another part of his own ego or something like that. I don't know.
Well, you know, that is a valid possibility.
One guy I debated here recently said, well,
Oh, no, that's just the end of it? Okay, so, Kent, what you did there was you showed why this person's unexamined moral philosophy was, in fact, internally incoherent. Which, I mean, that's a good thing to do. We're going with the idea that this is a real conversation. But what that doesn't do is establish that there's a God, or that evolution didn't happen, or that the Earth is 6,000 years old, or any of those things. Right? So, thanks for showing one random guy that may or may not exist, that his moral philosophy requires more examination. But that's literally the entire story. What that comes down to is a guy I talked to, allegedly, didn't have a well thought out moral philosophy. Which I don't know how that supports Kent Hovind's claims.
well, you know, we have a collective knowledge. We just intuitively know what's right and wrong. Everybody knows right and wrong.
I mean, okay, for one, let me go ahead and say 15 shekels, because I'm pretty sure Karen is Israeli, and I don't recognize that symbol otherwise. Says, for 15, I'm going to go with shekels. Says, okay, start talking about corporate personhood. All right, so,
See you guys next time. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. All right, so
It's not going to take that long, right?
corporate personhood is a known legal fiction that has a long-standing presence in common law, as well as other versions of sort of civil law, right? Now, the point of corporate personhood is that it allows a corporation, which is a group of people that get together for business purposes, to hold title to property, as well as be an entity which can be sued, right? So the point of corporate personhood is twofold, and it mostly has to do with property ownership and liability. So the reason it's important for property ownership is that because the corporation is legally a person as a legal fiction, you can own assets in the name of the corporation. And then people who buy or sell their shares in the corporation do technically gain partial ownership. But if you didn't have that ability to put deeds or titles to property in the name of the corporation as a whole, anytime you wanted to divest from a corporation or invest in a corporation, you would have to individually negotiate the sale of all of this stuff as a particular person, and the titles would be in the names of individual people. And it's just much simpler if you can own title as a person to part of the corporation, and the corporation itself can own titles to various kinds of property. And this doesn't have to be land. It can also be things like computers or tractors or even just stocks, right? Okay, the other part of corporate personhood is that it allows you to sue a corporation as an entity without needing to individually name all the owners. Because think about this. Imagine every single person who owns stock in Microsoft. Without corporate personhood, if you wanted to sue Microsoft, you would have to name every single individual shareholder. It would create an unreasonable barrier to suing corporations if you had to sue every single owner individually as a person. However, corporate personhood has traditionally not allowed corporations to enjoy all of the benefits of personhood under other aspects of law that don't involve those two things. So, for instance, that's why corporations are not allowed to vote. It's why corporations are generally not taxed as individuals, they're taxed as corporations because they're not actual persons. There's a legal fiction of the personhood of the corporations. So there have been attempts to, I think, inappropriately accrue the rights of actual persons to corporations in the past. However, corporate personhood as a legal fiction involved in tort law as well as property law is an important aspect of the legal system that we would be handicapped without. Corporations actually would have a freer reign in terms of being sued if they didn't have corporate personhood. And on the other hand, it would be virtually impossible to run a business without corporate personhood on the property ownership end. So overall, corporate personhood is something that we should definitely keep, but we should be wary about spreading the idea outside of the realm of property law and tort law. There you go. I just talked about corporate personhood because I was paid to.
Nice.
Oh, NIS, New Israeli Shekel. Okay, well, the saying 15 shekels is pretty good then. I'm sticking with that. 15 shekels. All right, here we go.
Oh, well, let's tell that to Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, Robert Assad but has not free speech been extended to corporate persons? Yes, which is, like I said, one of the areas where that is outside the realms of property law and tort. So it is one of the areas where we should be cautious about extending that, because that is not one of the traditional avenues in which corporate personhood can express itself. And it is also not one of the ones that serves the purposes served by those two. However, I will also say it is hard to separate out the right to free speech of the individuals who make up a corporation from the right of free speech of the corporation as a whole. So that is a thorny issue, but I do think that the degree to which it has simply been automatically accepted as a legal precedent is iffy. So there you go.
He knows it's right to kill anybody who won't convert to be a Muslim. He knows that's right. Let's tell Adolf Hitler because...
Oh, drink for Godwin's Law. I forgot to say it, but we added that recently. Anytime Godwin's Law comes up, we're just taking a drink because Kent does it all the time.
He knows it would be best if the world was all Aryan, and everybody else was destroyed. He knows that. Adolf Hitler honestly thought he was doing the world a favor by eliminating what he perceived as the inferiors.
That's true. He did think that. I'll take a drink. And then I'll point out that Kent Hovind is using the word no in a somewhat odd way. So Kent is basically saying he's using the word no as to have high confidence in. Now, in philosophical context, usually knowledge is defined as justified, true belief. So, one, it has to be true. If it's not true, you don't know it. Two, you have to be able to justify your belief. You can't justify it, you don't know it. And 3, you have to believe it. So, you have to actually think it's true. So if you can justify something that's true, but you actually don't think it is true, then you don't know it. There you go.
Is there an absolute standard someplace? Who decides right from wrong? Is this something Bill Clinton should decide?
I mean, given his iffy history with consent, no. No, Bill Clinton shouldn't decide this.
Does he have any idea what right and wrong is all about? Would be the question. Is this something,
I think yes.
Saddam Hussein should decide?
I think
Where?
these
where-
people mentioned have an idea of right and wrong.
Yeah.
Where's the absolute standard? Thus saith the Lord.
Yeah, okay, so again, Kent, I'm going to take a quick drink for Kent, again, confusing absolute with objective, which he does a lot, but here's the other thing. I point that out because the Bible doesn't involve a whole lot of absolute morality, and I'll use an example. So, the Bible has a presumption against dishonesty, right? But if you're familiar with the story of Rahab, who is a prostitute who is praised in the Bible for hiding Hebrew scouts into Canaan from the local authorities who wanted to capture them and kill them, presumably. We can come away from that with the understanding that it's not absolutely wrong to lie. There is an objective presumption against dishonesty given in the Bible, but certain circumstances can override that presumption. So the Bible doesn't actually, or at least can very easily be read as not reading that all morality is is absolute. But it does seem to read in a way that says that morality is objective. And so even thus saith the Lord, because remember, the 10 Commandments, which include a don't lie option, or don't lie number, even that can be overridden in the Bible by higher concerns. That's one of the reasons why traditional, both Jewish and Christian scholars and moral and philosophers and whatnot have said that there are circumstances where lying is okay. And one of the ones that they both agree on the most is to save human lives. In fact, a common rule in Jewish moral philosophy is that the number one goal is preserving human life. And so you can break any other rule, any law, if your goal is to save lives, which is why Jewish doctors will continue to work or be on call on the Sabbath. It's why, if someone is like, hey, eat this bacon or I'm going to kill people, you eat the bacon, right? Because that's a far less important rule than don't let people die. And Christianity has traditionally had similar ideas. So, yes, the Bible and religions derived from the Bible tend not to actually preach absolute morality. They tend to have objective morality.
Is mentioned in the Bible 413 times. Now that's absolute. See, the Christians have an absolute standard. Suppose I said to you guys doing construction around
I'm
here.
sorry,
I
I just got to say that
we're going to build a building over here, but
Kent is not even completing any thoughts here.
Yeah, he's just
He's
skipping around.
briefly touching on things and pretending that they're related and that he's making a point, but he's not even coming close to making a point. I did ask, I know he can't hear me, especially back in time, but what does it mean? What is the phrase, there are no absolutes mean? What's the context, Kent?
Yeah.
I'm going to give everybody a different tape measure. On your tape measure, this is an inch. Now, Kevin, on your tape measure, this is an inch. Okay? And on Nathan, your tape measure, this is an inch. So, how's that building going to look?
I think it'll end up looking fine because what's going to happen is very quickly, all three of those people are going to notice that they're measuring very different amounts of, let's say, wood, just to make it easy, right? And so when they're cutting wood to the same specifications, it's coming out as very strange. And then they're going to compare notes and say, oh, hey, all of us seem to have differently marked measures. Let's go to Lowe's or Home Depot or something, pick up a bunch of identical tape measures and start back. So I think the
Polite
house
way of
is going to
saying
work just fine.
this crazy guy gave us these weird rulers. We're just going to throw them away and use a real one.
Yeah. Because the thing is, and this is true in morality too, people tend to end up having relatively similar moral standards, right? Like pretty much everyone comes to the conclusion that there's a presumption against lying, there's a presumption against murder, there's a presumption against violating the consent of other people in terms of things like sex and dating or whatever. And while there are people who will ignore these presumptions and do things that they know they shouldn't, and they may or may not even feel guilty about it, we all tend to come to the same conclusion there. So when someone ends up coming to a vastly different conclusion, we all say, hey, wait up, hold on, this is weird. And it's the same thing with this. If everyone is noticeably coming to very different conclusions, we say, hey, hold up, wait a minute, something's off. And in the case of moral philosophy, what tends to be off is, you get people like who have, basically various cluster B personality disorders, right? So they might be narcissists, or they might have, like psychopathy or something, right? And then we have ways of acknowledging that, and treatment usually doesn't help in those cases, but we at least have things like, we can recognize that. We have legal ways to deal with people if they actually cross certain lines. And if you know that the person you're dealing with has one of these personality disorders, you can take appropriate action to protect yourself and others, stuff like that. But we don't just go, yeah, sure, that's fine, let's just go with it. That's not what we do. Okay. Carrie Bronson says, wait, does Kent think the inch is actually somehow objectively true? I mean, it is objectively the case that there is a standard for the inch. The inch is arbitrary, but it's also objective, right? So it's sort of like in the United States, as well as actually at this point most countries, you drive on the right side of the road, and it is objectively true. It's also arbitrary, but arbitrary and objective aren't necessarily different things. The inch isn't a part of nature, but it is objective because it has been objectively defined.
It's going to be a royal mess, isn't it? You have to have a standard. America has the National Bureau of Standards.
That's
They
true. Take a
keep a
drink.
standard meter, a stick made out of some kind of special metal.
That's less true. So I think it was true when Kent Hovind gave this, so I'll take a drink for Kent Hovind being right at the time. But as it is now, the speed of light is currently defined as a certain number of meters per second, and the meter is now actually defined in terms of how far light travels in a certain amount of time. So it is no longer the case that you have physical meter sticks anywhere that are the definition of the meter. Yeah, and Robert Asset points out, yep, the inch is objectively 2.54 centimeters. Yeah, that's actually how it's now defined. And because the centimeter is defined based on the meter, which is defined based on light, ultimately the inch is defined based on how long it takes light to travel a certain distance, which is the inch, right? We've kind of gone away from the idea of, well, let's keep a physical object as our objective unit for this measurement. And the big reason for that is physical objects deteriorate, right? Just by being exposed to light, you may shed a few atoms here or there. And so over time, people started noticing that, things like the standard kilogram or the standard meter stick or whatever were immeasurably deviating from what they had been in the past. So there you go.
Well, I'm sure it cost a bunch of money because the government paid for it. We paid for it. And they've got this thing in a air-conditioned case that is temperature controlled and humidity controlled and pressure controlled because they don't want it to change at all. So we all know what the standard is. It is so critical to have a standard of measurement, a standard of weights, a standard of volumes. How big is a gallon? Well, there's an absolute standard for a gallon or a liter in metric system.
That's true. I'll take a drink. And yes, it is important, although it is arbitrary. And I don't think Kent Hovind would argue that morality is arbitrary, but maybe he would. Maybe Kent is actually so far into divine command theory that he says, yes, morality is arbitrary. And things are right because God says they're right. It doesn't matter whether or not they're intrinsically right in some way.
Or the meter, or the foot, or the inch. There has to be a standard. You have to have that. And you have to have that in morals, too. So where in...
I mean, you don't have to, but most people do, so okay.
Evolution theory, where is the standard for determining right and wrong?
It's in the same place as it is in the germ theory of disease, Kent. And I know that we touched on this earlier, but we'll go a little bit more into it now. Scientific theories don't tell you what you ought to do. They tell you what the physical results of various things will be, or what may have happened in the past as a result of just nature working itself out the way it does. You can't use atomic theory to tell you whether or not to drop a nuclear bomb. You can't use the theory of universal gravitation to tell you whether or not you should shoot Kent Hovind out of the solar system on a rocket. Which, by the way, way less fuel requirement than dropping him into the sun. So all the people who were like, oh, you should shoot him in a rocket to the sun. No, that's way too expensive. Conserve your delta V. It's way cheaper to get out of the solar system than it is to drop into the sun. And the George says, why am I always late to these? I don't know, man. They happen at the same time every week. It's I can't even remember the last time we didn't go live at 9 p.m. Eastern. Or, let me rephrase. At 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is when these actually occur. So for the 1/3 or so of the year that is in Standard Time, we do change, but that's because Bent and I live in a state that doesn't bother with daylight savings time, as all states should. Talk to your state senators or whatever. Tell them to opt out of daylight savings time. It's stupid. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. We'll let Kent go for a little bit more, and then we'll call it.
I would just say what Dwight said in that episode of The Office. They're unrelated. That's it.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to actually just call it here. We're not going to hear more from Kent. I'm going to answer and the George said's question. He says, Dapper, how happy are you that we can now legally say tax evader and convicted domestic abuser Kent Hovind? I'm actually not, because if it were up to me, Kent Hovind wouldn't have put Cindy Lincoln in the hospital. It's a tragedy. Now, I will bring it up when talking about Kent Hovind, because it is a thing that we should not forget. That Kent Hovind put his partner in the hospital and was convicted of it. So, like, it is an important thing to note that the person that we're talking about has put the person in the hospital who should be the person he treats the best, who should be the person who's safest around him, who should be the person that he's protecting the most, right? That should be your romantic partner, right? That should be the person you're least likely to hurt, the person that you're going to prevent harm to as much as you possibly can, the person you care about the most. But no, it doesn't make me happy. It makes me disappointed but not surprised, and I will always bring it up. But with that, we're going to give some channel news. Bent, do you have anything to promote before I go into what's coming up on the channel?
No.
Fair enough. All right, so let's see. Thursday, the 7th, will be another episode of Revenge of the Biddle. It will be episode 4 of, I believe, 5. Episode 5 is, in fact, going to be the one where I have feathers, because we hit the $60 fundraising goal. The next fundraising goal is $120 to get stage 2 proto feathers. So, I mean, I guess if anyone wants to donate $105, we'll get there today. The 9th, there's nothing scheduled. The 12th will be a pre-recorded Kent with Bent. So we won't be live, so there won't be any chat interaction. However, if we do get super chats, I will be going through it and to look for that, and we will read them on the next time that we're live.
It'll be live for you guys, but not for us.
The 14th will be, I believe, the final episode of Revenge of the Biddle. Let's see. The 16th probably won't be anything. The 19th will actually be, right now, it is scheduled as our first Jackson with Jackson. We're going to take a look at the videos, a video from Dr. Charles Jackson, and talk about it with Jackson Wheat, who is a friend of the channel. I've been on his channel. He's been here. If you don't know who Jackson Wheat is, you must be living under a rock. Let's see. The 21st, it might end up being a speculative evolution video. I'm not sure. Oh, and for 50 Argentinian pesos from TikTok, I'd like to promote capybaras just because they're cute. Yeah, they are. Capybaras are awesome. They're also the largest rodent. And anytime I get to a zoo that has capybaras, it's a place that I spend some time because they're adorable. They are very friendly with other animals. They're just great. Let's see. The 23rd is tentatively scheduled for an interview with Cindy Lincoln, the person that Kent put in the hospital. The 26th should be a Kent with Bent. I'm not sure exactly what's happening the 28th. It's going to be something. And then the 25th, sorry, I forgot about the 25th, is the rescheduled date for the debate between Dr. Danster and Cardinal and Finding Truth. So that should be on the 25th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. There you go. Thank you, Manny Karen. I also hope I enjoy my vacation and love to you too. And the 30th should be a Leaving Young Earth Creationism that I have scheduled. And that's as far out as I'm going to be looking at this point. So, yeah, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I especially appreciate everyone who is a member or a patron or who super chatted, because that is what helps this channel stay on the air. If you can't do that, however, please do like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, share it with anyone you think might enjoy it. And we're going to go to the end credits. I just want to take a second to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 and above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovind, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bead, and Res Instance. My channel members and patrons help make this channel possible, and without their support, this channel really wouldn't exist. If you would like to help support the channel as a member or patron, there are links in the description to both join the channel as well as join the Patreon. Patrons and members get mentioned in these credit scenes, as well as getting early access to my scripted videos, and if you pledge $10 or above, you can also get access to various 3D assets that I create for Blender, both for use in the channel, as well as just general giveaways to my supporters to help in any Blender projects they might have. If a monthly or annual pledge isn't for you, then there is also a merch store linked to the description, and if none of that's right for you, please just like and subscribe, because every like and subscription really helps the video out. Thank you.